So the next question in the Component 1 class book, the Eurasian beaver. What's this? Large, eats plants. Formerly native to the UK, so it used to live here. And what did they used to do? They used to build dams, gnaw away at trees and build dams, which then blocked streams, forms ponds and bogs. Okay, and then they were hunted, and then of course these boggy places were then used. They would change and then used for all sorts of different things possibly. And here's a map. We can see where they have been legally reintroduced. Okay, a few places where they've been illegally. So for some reason they're bringing beavers back, but they haven't been through the right procedures. And an area that they're thinking about doing it. So they're giving us this information, and we're going to try and make sure that we use all this information in our questions. So we're starting with beavers used to be an endangered species in Europe. Explain what it's meant. So that's just to give us the definition. So a species that is at risk of extinction. That's it. A waste of page. They must have given you some extra lines there to make this into a full page. B, give two advantages of using reintroduction. Using the reintroduction of beavers from Northern Europe. So why would we bring beavers from Northern Europe? Well, we've lost some biodiversity when we lost the beavers, and if we bring it back, our biodiversity will be back to where it was in terms of beavers. So with all of these human impact, ecological things, quite often we're trying to increase or maintain biodiversity. So this would restore or increase our biodiversity. This would increase biodiversity. So we'd not only get the beavers back, but anything that lives in these small ponds and bogs that are disappearing, they would also proliferate as well. So increase biodiversity, e.g. more fresh water habitats. You get more insects and all sorts of stuff. Okay, that's one point. We need another point, and you can think of, particularly in the news over the winter, we've had lots of flooding, and this actually reduces damaged habitats and slows water flow. I think it says slows water flow. So these days it rains and it just all runs into the cities and floods roads and things, whereas previously water would be kind of stored in all of these dams for a while and it would sink through the system slower. So we could say reduces flooding. Flooding might damage other habitats as well. And then really the bit that we're alluding to the question, why would we get them from Northern Europe as opposed to a beaver from another country? So the use of the European beaver would maintain the correct genetics or gene pool they'd already be adapted to this environment, the correct niche. So try and put those into words. So use of Northern Europe's beavers. They're already adapted to the environment, so it's going to work. Already adapted to the environment. The correct niches is another way of saying that. Correct genetics. Part C. There's been some reintroduction of beavers into the UK, both legal and illegal. Give 2 reasons. So last time it was 2 as well, so we only needed 2 of those. And again, we're only gonna need 2 from the suggestions that I'm giving you. So why are we concerned about illegal? Unregulated. So bring in the one thing that you might think, oh, they might not be the right type of beavers, and that the introduction of alien species. I think like cane toads in Australia, rabbits in this country, Himalayan balsam and things like that you might have seen out on the field trip. So I'm going to start off with wrong species, in the wrong habitat. May be the wrong species. They might just die, or they might take over. Inappropriate. One in. Inappropriate habitat for those beavers. And then these other unregulated beavers, well, if you regulated them and did it properly, you'd probably make sure they were free of diseases and things like that. So if it's illegal, it might just be done on an ad hoc basis, and all the proper checks might not take place. So might introduce diseases, and TB is a particular one of concern. So we've got our 2 marks there. Another definite big point there. Well, if it's done properly, the experts will look at the land and make sure that it's ready for the beavers, and the flooding is going to be okay, and so on. If we did it illegally, then we might end up flooding places that we don't want to flood. So you might lose land due to flooding. So might lose land, like farmland or habitats, due to flooding. Or indeed you might it might stop water from going into the rivers, water problems. So 2 of those. And part D. It's only 7 marks this entire thing, but it's a lot of work for 7 marks. Environmental conservation decisions can only be made on the basis of sound scientific principles. Give 2 factors that scientists have to consider when planning the successful reintroduction. So it's maybe some of the points that we've already mentioned. So making sure the habitat is suitable for beaver introduction. So if you reintroduce beavers to somewhere that's dry, then they're not going to be happy. So we could say the habitat needs to be suitable for the beavers. It needs to have, small streams and places for them to live, the habitat. So that's one of your marks, and then the rest of the suggestions will be the other mark. So things like, what were these scientists doing in their research? Well, why bother with scientists? Because they know about these things, so they've got the resources and the expertise, to re-establish them properly. So this is the expertise to re-establish the beavers properly. That's a difficult point to make, is that? So if we are planning these, you might think we've already suggested we might lose land to flooding if it's illegal or not thought out properly. So we need to consult people. So consultation, for example, with landowners who might complain about flooding land. So need to consult landowners who might not want these beavers, and also correct beavers. So we need these scientists to make sure that we've got the right beaver free of disease as well. So correct species of beaver free of disease. So that's one of those points will be the other one for 7 marks.